Geopolitical George is back. I'm in my garden. I'm in front of the dollhouse, or playhouse. It's not a dollhouse, it's a playhouse. It's for my dolls to play in. And my boy, I wouldn't call him a doll. I wish I made it a little bigger. We could go in there and I could sit in a little playhouse and do videos. That'd be pretty cool. Be out of the wind, be able to enjoy my cigar better. I'm here because the wind's blowing too much over by the swing. If you saw my video in Buildy, where he talked about mechanical cultural artifacts and how the culture comes through and even designing practical things. We all knew that, but I hope that I added something to our knowledge of that, because I haven't heard anybody say that in those terms. I haven't seen that a bunch, about how our technical progress is erasing all the differences in all these things, at least in those areas. Anyway, that brings us to more benefits of Eurasianism. Now, some of you might be asking, why do they call it Eurasianism? Doesn't that sound exclusive? Well, there's a reason for that. Globalism comes from the Atlantic. It comes from Atlantic powers, from the sea powers. Great Britain and America, and her little vassals in Europe. They are vassals. Let me give you a definition of Atlanticism. The geopolitical term denoting, from the historical and geographical point of view, the western sector of world civilizations. From the military strategic point of view, the members of country of NATO, U.S., the cultural point of view, the unified information network created by the Western media empires. From the social point of view, the market system, claimed to be the absolute in denying all different forms of organization of economic life. How's that working out for you? A lot of you are anti-socialist, but there's a case to be made about having a government, if it's controlled by the people, that limits the activity of billionaires and oligarchs and corporations and keeps them from buying your government and then turning you into slaves. That's a bad thing. I'm not a socialist, but you did have protection and you lost that. Anyway, that's just my 2 bits. Atlanticists are the strategists of the Western civilization and their conscious supporters in other parts of the planet, aiming at putting the whole world under control and imposing the social, economic, and cultural stereotypes typical of Western civilization upon the rest of mankind. The Atlanticists are the builders of the New World Order, the unprecedented world system benefiting an absolute minority of the population. This calls them there the golden billion. Well, I think it's worse than that. It's benefiting 1/10 of 1%. More like a 10,000th of a percent when you get to the real string pullers, those that get to make the decisions and do everything for their benefit. Everybody under them is just middle management. Let's define globalism, shall we? How does a Eurasianist define globalism? Globalism, the process of building the New World Order, at the center of which stand the political, financial, oligarchic groups of the West, called globalization. The victims of this process are sovereign states, national cultures, religious doctrines, economic traditions, manifestations of social justice, surrounding environment, all spiritual, intellectual, and material diversity on the planet. The term globalism is the customary political lexicon, means just unipolar globalism, not the fusion of different cultures, social, political, and economic systems into something new, as this would be a multipolar globalism, or Eurasianist globalism. Sounds like a contradiction of terms, but you have globalism as a plan for the planet. The Western globalism is homogenizing, single pole of command, kind of like the Catholic Church did to the original church when they decreed that they had hegemony and didn't have to listen to the other churches and could start giving them orders, thus the schism. Funny, the same people that rejected the Catholic Church's hegemony, the supremacy of the Pope and all that, are the Orthodox, and the Orthodox are Eurasianists. Eurasianists is where it comes from. Eurasia and the Orthodox. Every historical epoch has its own distinct system of coordinates, political, ideological, economic, and cultural. For example, the 19th century in Russia passed under the sign of dispute between the Slavophiles and the pro-Westerners, the Zabadniki. In the 20th century, the watershed passed between the Reds and the Whites. If you know your Russian history, then you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, look it up. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Excuse me, I gotta keep this going. I'll let you think upon those things. Oh, stop interrupting. Anyway, I remember reading a lot about the dispute between the Slavophiles and the pro-Westerners. It goes all the way back to Peter the Great. Peter the Great was a German, and he tried to impose a German way of thinking and a German model on Russia. This is way back, it would have been towards the end of the 17th century. And he's quite successful at it, as a matter of fact, and it started a schism between the ruling class and the people in Russia. They even spoke different languages. And Peter's court spoke German. Eventually they kind of slid off into French, and by the time you get to the wars of Napoleon's war against Russia, all the nobility spoke French, and they couldn't even communicate with their own peasants without a translator. A lot of them didn't even speak Russian, and the Tsar decreed that no more speaking of French because we are at war with France. Well, that was a problem, but it was, I guess, symbolic. They eventually got weaned from French speaking. Anyway, where was I? The 19th century. Okay, in the 20th century, between the Reds and the Whites, of course, the Bolsheviks, according to those loyal to the Tsar, the monarchists. Not just Bolsheviks either. There were the Mensheviks. I think a very large degree, a lot of the revolution was kind of like this revolution on Maidan. There are a lot of people duped into thinking they were going to get the Tsar to enact reforms and be big military transport aircraft. Probably can't see it, I'll try to catch it. It's a big one. Anyway. They thought that there would be some reforms and they would become a liberal federal republic like America. They were actually, as I remember, I could be wrong, I think they were the majority. That's why the people that ran the media, who were Bolsheviks, called them Mensheviks, which means the small party, and they called themselves Bolsheviks, which is the big party. It's always been fake news, fake memes. Nothing new. Sorry, nothing new. But we all know who won that one, with a little help from their friends in the Pale of Settlement, who weren't Russians, didn't consider themselves to be Russians. And all their friends and kinfolk and buddies and relatives came back over from London and New York and became commissars. Didn't even speak Russian, a lot of them. But anyway, I think they spoke Penguinese. Anyhow, the 21st century, which we're well into now, it's the 20s, baby. will be, according to this, the century of the opposition between the Atlanticists, supporters of unipolar globalism, and the Eurasianists. I think they're right. Everything I see indicates that. This was written in 2005. I think we're onto something here. I think this is interesting. I think this is something that's valuable. I think this is something you could look into. But you have to know a little bit about Russian culture and history in general, in order not to be triggered by some of the nomenclature and to understand some of the things that they're saying. That's why they call it Eurasianism. It stands opposed to Atlanticism. The New World Order, the Great Reset, all these things come from the West. They didn't come from Russia. They're not communist. Communism is nothing but a tool anyway, to trick people and to go in against their own interest. Who paid Leon Trotsky? Who gave him all his money? Plutocrats, especially Rothschild, to have a revolution and set up a dictatorship of the proletariat is a trick. They got their money back many times over. They just looted the place. Revolutions are great for looting everything and then starting over. It was in 1917, 18, 19, the original revolution, then things solidified. The Bolsheviks ran everything. They had their execution factories. They got rid of a bunch of people. They confiscated everything. Anything that was valuable went back to Lord Rothschild. It was a great reset. About 100 years ago. A little over 100 years ago. It was solidifying about this time, exactly 100 years ago. Maybe these things go in 100-year cycles, the way the economies work. The fiat money economy. Yeah, you only got about 100 years or so before things start blowing up to where it's going to collapse, and then you got to have a reset. Yeah, there's lots of phases you can go to preserve it, but yeah, it could be what's happening. Speculation. It's Buildy speculation. Your results may vary. But let's look at this. Okay. Against the establishing of the Atlanticist world order and globalization stand the supporters of the multipolar world, the Eurasianists. The Eurasianists defend, on principle, the necessity to preserve the existence of every people on Earth, the blossoming variety of cultures and religious traditions, the unquestionable right of the peoples to independently choose their own path of historical development. You can make silly cars like the English. You can build the Dr. Seuss type city to live in. It's nobody's business but yours. If you're a Who, you would like that. If you want to live in Whoville, it's nobody's business but the Who's. I think this is great. You should all like this. There's nothing not to like. That's why I want to take this to the heartland, to the American conservatives, because I know they're Eurasianists themselves. They just don't know it. They've been fooled and hoodwinked and brainwashed. And that's a heavy word, but it's true. By television, and told what to think by all these liars and idiots. Watching some general waterhead on Fox News tell, we got to do something to stop this in Ukraine. Yeah, he's a globalist. That's all you need to know. He's getting money from his stock options. He's in there because he's representing defense contractors. Maybe Pratt and Whitney. I've been in their place. Aircraft jet engine manufacturing place. I did a lot of work for them. Yeah, the first time I went in there, I saw it. Rainbow flags in front of the doors, telling who they support. That's a big part of it too. It's all part of a whole. Anyway, I'm getting off path here. The unquestionable right of peoples to choose their own path of historical development. The Eurasianists support dialogue of cultures and value systems. They cherish the organic combination of devotion to tradition and creative cultural innovations. Eurasianists are not only the representatives of the peoples living in the Eurasian continent. Being Eurasianist is a conscious choice, which means combining the aspiration to preserve traditional forms of life with the aspiration to free, creative, social, and personal development. In this way, Eurasianists are all free, creative personalities who acknowledge the values of tradition. Among them are also representatives of those regions which objectively form the basis of Atlanticism. Let me say that again. In this way, Eurasianists are all free, creative personalities who acknowledge the values of tradition. Among them are also representatives of those regions which objectively form the basis of Atlanticism. They should have let me edit this for Americans because this is really very convoluted phraseology. Maybe it's translated from Russians. I know the perils of that. To clean this up, I would say Eurasianists are not only Eurasian people. Being Eurasianist is a conscious choice, which means combining the aspirations of, preserving traditional forms, wanting these things, and among the people that want these things are people that are in the regions which form the base of Atlanticism. America, North America, Canada, jolly old England. Yeah, these places. You can be a Eurasianist Englishman. You can be a Eurasianist American. Most Americans are Eurasianist. I want to tell them that. And you should too. This is exciting stuff. This is a solution. They're not just anti-Biden and anti-Democrat, anti-cuck Republican, and we're libertarian. No, dude, stop it. You're a Eurasianist. Face it, you're a Eurasianist. Get rid of your bigotry and your Russophobia. You don't have to become Russian. I highly suggest that you don't. There are real problems here. These people love bureaucracy. You can't get anything done. You have Eurasianism here. It's going to be Eurasianism with Russian characteristics. You'll have all that freedom and cultural creativity and everything, but you'll still have to stand in line for 6 hours to get the paperwork that you need to get a license to do something that you need to do in order to get the paperwork to pay taxes on what you're doing. But the taxes will be very small, but you'll spend hours and hours and hours standing in line. I don't think they'll ever get rid of that here. It's in their genes, I think. But I'm not here to criticize Russia. I live here, and I like it. But you can be a Eurasianist if you're in Tennessee. You hear me, Anthony? You can be a Eurasianist if you're in Illinois. Well, it's very difficult. Anyway, that's the point here. I think I clarified it a little in a meandering sort of way. That's what I aim to do. This book it's a great book, but it's as if Shakespeare wrote political theory. Can you imagine that? Your brain has to do somersaults to follow the logic. Upon topsy-turvy turned. Logic topsy-turvy turned. It's I think it's definitely a translation, or it's just written by a native Russian speaker. I'll have to look into that and see who actually is responsible for this. Should be chastised. Eurasianists and Atlanticists are opposed to each other in everything, and this is true. They should be. They defend two different, alternative, mutually excluding images of the world and its future. It is the opposition between Eurasianists and Atlanticists that defines the historical outline of the 21st century. I think that's true. It's going to be a long struggle. I'm proud to be a part of it. It doesn't pay anything either, or not me. These people that translated this probably got paid, but whatever. We don't have time for sour grapes. just notice things. Which brings us to the Eurasianist vision of the future world. Yeah, something to look into. Dugin talks about this all the time. Not John Mark Dugin, but Alexander Dugin, the political philosopher. John Mark Dugin is not a political philosopher. He's a Marine, goddammit! And a good one. You need to support that guy. He knows what he's doing. Anyway. And he's a real good guy, an honest guy. Uncle Buildy approves of his message. The Eurasianists consequently defend the principle of multipolarity, standing against the unipolar globalism imposed by the Atlanticists. According to the Eurasian vision of this new world, there will be no longer traditional states. That's scary. No longer traditional states. Well, let's go on and then come back to that. Instead, there will be a new integrated civilizational formations of great spaces united into geoeconomic belts, geoeconomic zones. Okay, if you're thinking this sounds like Soros or the open border stuff, no. This is a different vision. It's like a mirror image of it. We're talking about traditional states like in European thought. Not states as in the United States. They want to make them like the United States. You go through a border like it's nothing in America. Europeans they find that mind-boggling. I was talking to a European just today about that. It's a beautiful thing. He really enjoyed it. He's never been to the States, but he really enjoys the concept. He says it must be nice. He's an Englishman. It must be nice to just drive from all these different climates, all these different terrains, and all different cultures. Indeed, still there are different cultures in America. A Tennessean is nothing like a person from Brooklyn. A Texan is nothing like a Tennessean. And then you go out to the Northwest and people are totally different. Bruh. Whoa, bruh. There's still cultural differences. There's still distinct cultures, but you can just whip through the borders like it's not even there. I never paid attention to borders and state lines, except for helmet laws. Back in the 80s, I made a lot of trips back and forth from Illinois to Texas. I'd hang out in Illinois and in Arkansas. There's a helmet law in Arkansas. I'd go to a pawn shop and buy a real cheap helmet, like $5 for a crappy helmet. And when I got to the Texas state line, I didn't need it anymore. I'd take that puppy off and chuck it in the ditch. I left a lot of helmets in Texarkana laying in the ditch next to the highway. I enjoyed it. It was liberating. Yeah, it was littering, but you cast the first stone if you're without sin. It was a helmet. Anyway. According to the Eurasian vision of this new world, there will no longer be traditional states. Instead, there will be new integrated civilizational formations, great spaces united into geoeconomic belts, geoeconomic zones. According to the principle of multipolarity, the future of the world is imagined as the equal benevolent partnership relations between or among all countries and peoples, organized according to the principle of proximity in terms of geography, culture, values, and civilization, and for geoeconomic belts, each one consisting in turn of some great spaces. Now, I don't know how far they thought this out into economics, how universal this is. With your economies, of course, some products cannot be produced in some areas. Resources exist in spots, and you need various things to do any sort of modern conveniences. And it's good to have trade and not be isolated, not put up barriers. This is what they envision. It's like the U.S. You don't pay a big penalty, taking something from Arkansas into Missouri to sell it. Or sourcing your goods. I worked in South Dakota and we had to get equipment brought up that we rented from Texas. kind of pricey for the shipping, but it was necessary. They didn't have the stuff in North Dakota. They should have, but economics dictate these things. This is what we're talking about here, economic zones and your cultural entities and your different cultures, and even you could go all the way down to community and village levels. Like I said, you could have a Whoville in there somewhere if you want. You're not going to bother anybody. Might be kind of dangerous to build things like that, but if Whos are okay with it, that's cool. That's nobody's business but the Whos. You can have British people can go back to making silly cars and silly motorcycles, and that's okay. I'm an American. What the hell are you doing this for? Oh, it's English. Okay, that's fine. Double reverse linkage for no reason. That's what you do. That's cool. It's like your language. It's Baroque and has lots of unnecessary stuff in it for the sake of culture and art. That's a good thing. You follow me? Are we good with this so far? I don't get any feedback. I just kind of practice, and I like doing that. Okay, they have thought this out a good bit. I've browsed through this. I never really got this far into it, but even drew up some maps. Yeah, take a little screenshot of that if you like. And this represents these lines. This is kind of like the British when they drew up the Middle East right after World War One. Over tea. Oh, the United States has got a real small sphere of influence. That might be a temporary measure until things settle down. The transatlantic layer, they're including Europe and Canada. This is done by Russians. They're going to be a little sore. Can't blame them. This is 2005. They know it was done to them in the 90s. Okay, this is going to take a deep dive to get into this because they're really using unfortunate nomenclature on some of it, which will trigger people. It won't trigger my audience, but it might some of their friends. My God, what are you looking at too? Well, let me go back and see what the last phrase was here, because we're going right to these systems. Okay, we're talking about the geography, cultural, 4 geoeconomic belts, each one consisting in term of some great spaces. Okay, they're going to be large. Nice way of saying that. The Euro-African belt, including 3 great spaces: European Union, Islamic Arab Africa, subtropical Africa. Okay, another space that they've proposed that might evolve. They're not drawing things up and saying this is what we're going to dictate. It's not their nature. They're guessing about how things would accommodate themselves over time, naturally and organically. It's nice to be, a strategic thinker and be ready for stuff. You know what I'm saying? The Asian Pacific belt, including Nippon and the countries of Southeastern Asia and Indochina, Australia, and New Zealand. The Eurasian continental belt, including 4 great spaces: Russia and the countries of the Commonwealth of Independent States, post-Soviet space. The countries of continental Islam, India, and China. India and Russia have a lot going together, a lot in common. Did you know that people that are scholars that have studied Sanskrit with no training whatsoever can understand Russian? That's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true or not. That's not personal experience. Regis Philbin, I'll link that. I'll link that in here. Interviewed a girl from India, a woman from India. She's fascinating. I didn't agree with a lot of what she said, but it's definitely fascinating. And she mentioned that Sanskrit and Russian have a very, very similar grammar. And Russian has some pretty weird grammar, which the only thing I bring away from it is I'm glad I don't have to learn Sanskrit. Anyway, After that, we have the American belt. North America, Central America, and Southern America. Oh, one belt. The Amero Union. The Chinese are working on one belt, one road. They're on the same page with this stuff, you know, the Chinese. I know a lot of people living in China. Not close friends of mine, but friends of friends, friends of my wife, friends of my friend that I just talked to today. They say it's just absolutely fantastic. They're so technologically advanced. And you see some of the stuff on the internet they've built, especially in their roads and bridges. It's pretty impressive. The Chinese cars around here that I've seen, I think I said something about it in my last video. I've seen them really shake the bugs out just in 4 years, 15. Oh, it was more than that, 2015 or so. They started smoothing out around 2017, 2018. From my personal experience, I didn't go through and look how things are built, but I see a lot of Chinese cars in my neighborhood, especially tourist season. Lots of people come in here from the Far East, and they're driving Hoovers and Sun Yang or something like that, and Great Walls and Geelys and Action or something like that. I don't even know how they pronounce the words. They give them really dynamic English sounding words, names, or European sounding names. But the first ones I saw, they were awful. They sounded like this. I can tell by the sound of that engine, it ain't gonna last very long. They drive by and you smell burnt metal. And all the panels were crooked. There's big gaps in between the door and the fender on one end, and it's hitting and scrubbing the paint off on the other end. They were awful. You can't tell the difference in quality now from a European or a Japanese car when you look at it up close. I saw some of them. I started noticing. I went up and looked real close at all the lines, all the joints. They're pretty tight. I hear them go by. They're nice and smooth and quiet. They don't smell like burnt metal anymore. Yeah, they got it together pretty quick. It took a while. It took the Japanese a while. The Americans made really awful cars in some cases, especially the small manufacturers. You ever take a close look at a Crosley or a Kaiser Henry J? Those are really cheap cars. They didn't have the manufacturing capability to do them very well. They were awful. The people that bought them just kind of got screwed. But they got the capital and they got a little time. It gets better. Some big corporation doesn't swoop in and grab them like a crab. That happens a lot in the West. The Chinese, they got a different system. They don't let the monopolies form. The government actually governs what corporations can do instead of vice versa. It's communism with Chinese characteristics. It's not your grandfather's communism. It's not the Great Leap Forward. It's not the Cultural Revolution or any of that stuff. It's all parts of their history. I'd like to go there. Never have been. One of my friends spent a lot of time there and did a lot of business there years ago. He was impressed too, and it was a long time ago he was there. He said it's awesome, these factories they got. It's mind-blowing what they can do. I'll tell some of those stories some other time. But anyway. We got our vision for economic spaces, geo-economic spaces. What's the advantage of that? Thanks to such organization of world space, global conflicts, bloody wars, and extreme forms of confrontation threatening the very existence of mankind become less likely. Instead of having a UN imposing things on people and foobarring somebody that doesn't go along with the program, and then having that captured by the oligarchic forces who start getting the UN to beat up people that don't go along with their program. No, we don't need that. We organize things in such a ways to try to avoid conflicts. Any of you know anything about safety theory? I do. I build machinery. I've been building it for years. And the best thing to do is to build a machine in such a way where it's really hard for somebody to get hurt in it. You have safeguards that make it difficult, where you really have to go out of your way and be really, really stupid and violate any sort of laws of physics in order to hurt yourself. Built-in safety. That's the best kind. It's better than guards. It's better than PPE. It's better than training. You build it into the machine. You make a machine. You can make a very complex machine safe as milk. I've done it a lot. They're still using them. I built stuff years ago. They've been using for a long time. And this is pretty dangerous stuff too, in steel mills. It can be done. You could design economies like that. This is basically what they're talking about. I know it's kind of a strange metaphor to get your head around, but yeah, I think my viewers are pretty smart. They get it. If not, put it in your comments, and I'll elaborate on it some more next time. Class, any questions? Okay. Russia and its partners in the Eurasian continental belt will establish harmonic relations not only with the neighboring belts, Euro-African, Pan-Asian, Pacific, but also with its antipod, the American belt, which will be also called to play a constructive role in the Western Hemisphere in the context of a multipolar structure. It's like keeping the kids away from each other, give them their separate rooms. And they can still interact, but the interaction between one economic belt and another one is going to be under different rules and different guidelines and customs than the interaction of people inside an economic belt. That's basically what he's saying. Such vision of the future, such vision of future mankind. I'm going to say it just like they have it here. Such vision of future mankind is the opposite of the globalist plans of the Atlanticists, aimed at creating a unipolar, prepackaged New World Order under the control of the oligarchic structures of the West. I ought to propose a project to these people. I could rewrite this to where, normal people can read it, if you don't have to be a native Russian speaker who learned English and also a political scientist in order to understand what the freaking hell they're saying. Yeah, that'd be pretty good. I can make this smooth. I can make it sing. I'm sure they won't pay anything. They'll take 2 years to decide whether to let me do it or not. Like I said, it's Russia. I'm getting tired of it. I got to be more independent. And that's why Uncle Buildy needs your support, because this is for you. This isn't for Russia. They already got it. You understand? The big shitstorm is coming back to America with all these Nazis woven into the fabric, especially Canada. People might want to think about helping people like me get the word out and train people to be able to oppose it and know what you're opposing and know what your principles are, so you can oppose it and you won't be duped into helping Nazis like everybody's doing now. You're wearing all your little blue and yellow masks. I don't get discouraged. I look at it as a freaking challenge. I'm all about challenges. I'll be doing challenges if I'm 100 freaking years old if I make it that far. I'll keep doing it. I don't care how much bad news I get. I'm just going to keep on ticking. How about you? Oh, where was I? The Eurasianists consider the nation-state and their present features as an obsolete form of organizations of spaces and peoples. Yeah, I think so too. There's still national sovereignty, though. There has to be right now. But you got to think a little bigger than that. And see how easy it is to illuminate this stuff and say, this is Soros stuff. You want to eliminate nations. You're the New World Order. No. Just got to refute that, because that's going to come. That's what people are going to say. They've been triggered. You want to eliminate the nation state? No, just that the nation state is obsolete. It is. It's obsolete as it is thought of right now. You can have your nation, but it's going to have to be in an economic zone and kept away from certain other nations, and your cultures can flourish and do their own thing in their own time in this system. That's a priority. Your corporations have done all this damage. It's the corporate system that wants a nationless world, a borderless world, because they're going to control everything. Who can go where, according to whether the QR code is given into their phone or their chip through the AI system, which they control and they program. That's their vision. The Eurasianist vision is not that. Now, all of Russia isn't Eurasianist. There's lots of Atlantists in here, and I think the mayor of Moscow is one of them. He's the one that tried to get the QR codes going, and all the other little governors in some other areas followed his lead. And Putin couldn't do anything about it. You know why? Because they're federalized here. They have rights in their own little area. The elected officials have a certain degree of sovereignty. The federal government can't jam things down their throats like they do in the U.S. Now, they're really trying to now. And it didn't work very good because people just didn't buy it. You have to have a QR code to go to any of these places that we've authorized to have them. And so, guess what? Those places made absolutely no money because everybody said, yep, don't need it. Just won't go out anymore. And when the money dried up, okay, we'll drop that. Yeah, it was really about sickness, wasn't it? They exposed themselves. Could that work in America? They doubled down in America. In Australia, they brought in the thugs. Who were those guys? Those cops that were beating the crap out of people and enjoying it. Were they even Australians? Some of them were. You inculcate that kind of culture among your police. I've been around cops. I've heard them talk. I'd sit in the gym. Yeah, I used to go to the gym. I'd sit across the wall from where the cops hung out and listen to them talk. Most of those guys, this is in Houston, North Houston. Most of those guys didn't have any business with authority. They were sadistic bullies is all in the hell they were. Most of them belonged in jail, just listening to them talk, the way they talk about people. And I've had interesting dialogues with cops on the side of the road when I was a biker. I was a squeaky clean outlaw too. They pulled me over. I didn't have any warrants. I didn't have any guns. I didn't have any drugs. Boy, they get pissed off. They get mad. It's funny. Well, I wasn't always squeaky clean. After my religious epiphany, I stayed in the biker lifestyle. It was pretty sweet. Didn't have to worry about stuff. Like back in the 80s, I had to worry about stuff. Oh man, which plates do I have on this thing? Which license do I pull out? Yeah, I was pretty sketchy back then. Typical of the historical period from the, holy crap, 15th to the 20th century, in the place of nation states, new political formations must arise, combining into themselves the strategic unification of great continental spaces with complex multidimensional systems of national, cultural, and economic autonomies. Did you hear that? Autonomies. Some features of such organizations of spaces and peoples may be observed both in the ancient empires of the past, like the Empire of Alexander the Great, the Roman Empire, etc., and in the newer political structures. It gives the European Union as an example. That might not be such a good idea. And the former Soviet states. I would include the Ottoman Empire under that. They had a system that wasn't really the same as a nation state. Different various ethnicities and religious people had their own little millets and it was in a matrix of Ottoman Islam, Sunni Islam. Not ideal, but I'm not talking about that exact thing. I'm talking about the same principles being applied. The area that's now Germany wasn't even a nation state until 1867, I believe. It's a little flotsam of independent city-states and fiefdoms and kingdoms. It's all congealed under the rhetoric and diplomacy of Otto von Bismarck and put into the German Empire. It began. There was Austria, there was Prussia, but there wasn't any German Empire over that area till fairly recently. Yeah, this nation-state thing is a lot more flexible than you might think. You've had it pounded into you because of World War II, World War I, and World War II, and your history teacher, who probably wasn't very smart. Depends on how old you are when you went to school. Their teaching's a calling, but there's a lot of hirelings in it. Contemporary states today face the following outlooks. Outlooks? Okay, contemporary states face the following outlooks. Self-liquidation and integration in a single planetary space under U.S. domination, Atlanticism, globalism. They want to absorb everything into the Borg. The Great Reset Borg. We have a bunch of maps, which I'm not going to mess with right now. Maps and graphs. Oh, that's fetching. Yeah, it's colors. Okay, this is a scheme of international Eurasianist movement. I need to study that because I consider myself an international Eurasianist thus far. Whether they claim me, I don't know, but that's not important. Kind of like I'm an Orthodox man that hasn't been properly Orthodox chrismated. Although I was baptized a long time ago by Brother Dearman in John Osteen's church. Yeah, kind of sketchy, but I think it's real anyway. The Spirit of God isn't exclusive to the Orthodox Church. Anyway, I can be Orthodox. If they don't claim me, I'm not a heretic. Unless what I just said is considered heresy. And then that's too bad then. Opposing globalization, attempting to preserve their own administrative structures, formal sovereignty, notwithstanding globalization, or entering super-state formations of regional nature, great spaces on the basis of historical, civilizational, and strategic communities. Did I miss something that doesn't coincide with what I just read on the other side of all these maps? Did I miss a page? No. Contemporary states today face the following outlooks. Self-liquidation. Oh, okay, I see. Okay. I think it's an either thing, an either or thing. Yeah, okay. Face the following outlooks. Let's say the following choices might be a better word. Either self-liquidation and integration in a single planetary space under U.S. domination, Atlanticism, globalism, or, my or added, opposing globalization, attempting to preserve their own administrative structures, formal sovereignty, notwithstanding globalization. Well, some people have done that. Let me see, who was that? Muammar Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Bashar al-Assad, and now Putin. Interesting. Okay, it has another choice here. Entering a supra-state formations of regional nature, great spaces, on the basis of historical civilization and strategic communities. Well, that would be, I think, an outcome of the last choice that I just said. So it's either being liquidated as the globalist Borg or opposing globalism. You follow me? The third variant is the Eurasianist one. Okay, I see that now. The second choice is opposing globalization, attempting to preserve their own administrative structures, trying to keep the status quo. Let's go back to the 70s and just pretend things are like that. We'll make America great again. No, you're not going to make America great again. You don't believe me? Give it 6 more months and we'll go through this again. Better listen. Yeah, I would take number 3. What's behind door number 3? Entering the supra-state formations of regional nature, the great spaces, the economic belts, the economic zones, the economic areas of activity on the basis of historical civilization and strategic communities. Communities that are designed to protect the communicants, the people that live there, and their cultures, their traditions. If they have none, well, that's just fine too. No, they can develop some, or they can adopt some, or they can be adopted by somebody. I don't know. It's all about live and let live. You can do that. It can be done. We have the technology. But still being a part of a big enough structure where you can have production and technology, and like we have, it's constrained. Your corporate structures is one thing that's got to go. They have to be brought under subjugation to, I'd say, my ideas were a consortium of local authority, a modular system that would be in these economic zones with accountability, use the technology to make people accountable. No dealing behind the scenes, no fugazi stuff, no shenanigans. Everybody's vetted. You want to drug test me to work in a factory? Well, you're going to drug test the governor too. I suggested that at a drug testing place once, and the woman administering the test got mad. I didn't even suggest it. Well, I did in a sneaky way. I had to go get a drug test to work in a factory. And I asked her, she was an entrepreneur, boy, that was her own business. She was proud of it. Had all kinds of plaques on the wall, all kinds of news articles about her. She was a powerful woman, and she was administering it herself. I guess she's short-handed. This is before the Great Plague. And I, just making small talk, I said, you ever get any, like, judges or, city councilmen or even governors in here to drug test? She looked at me like I was nuts. I says, no, really? I mean, they don't make them get drug tests? And she got angry. She got freaking mad and hostile. Why would you get mad at something like that? Oh, you work with your hands. Loser. You're here to get a drug test to make sure you're not, some sort of drug-using lunatic thug. Well, we got to make sure and vet you before you can go in a factory. You might get it dirty with your drug goodies. We're the elite. I'm a powerful woman. I hang out with judges. No, they don't need drug tests. Yeah, bitch probably does coke with them back behind the places in the after party, and in the basement. She got mad. I don't know. I found that pretty interesting. Tweak people once in a while. It's good for them. It's good for you, too. You learn a lot about human nature. I've tweaked people since I was a kid. You got to be kind of subtle about it sometimes. And you can't be scared of consequences either, but yeah, that happened. The third variant is the Eurasianist one. Entering a superstate formations of regional nature, great spaces on the basis of historical, civilizational, and strategic communities. That's the Eurasianist one. From the point of view of Eurasianist analysis, This is the only way of development capable to preserve things in a most valued and original, which this is the only way of development capable to preserve things most valued and original, which contemporary states are called to safeguard in the face of globalization. From the point of view of Eurasianist analysis, this is the only way of development capable to preserve things most valued and original, which the contemporary states are called to safeguard in the face of globalization. Okay, I got it now. Is it me? Let's see, these people need help. My struggle is real. The mere conservative aspiration to preserve the state at any cost is doomed. There's your money phrase, kitten. I'll have to consult Charlie Kirk on that. Oh, excuse me. Charlie Kirk. I gotta make my head real big and my face real small, right? I don't know, I just like that guy. Conservatives that it's just like globalism light. That's all it is. Not accomplishing much. It's a money system. A lot of money goes through that. Those guys make a lot of money. Your mainstream conservative sites, even on something like Telegram, they're huge, and you can't get your foot in the door. They wouldn't interview somebody like me. Probably going to have to someday. I hope so. I'm not going to quit. They're like dust that the wind blows away. All these media personalities, all these liars, all these phonies don't have any principles. They're a thing of the past. They're doomed. Real interesting times are coming. You're going to have to pick sides, and they're not capable of it. American pragmatism isn't moral. This is moral. This is a moral statement. This is a deeply orthodox moral statement in this ideology. I think it deserves being explained properly with some sort of grammar that Americans can follow and somebody to help ease them around the trigger words. Yeah, I got a plan. And you're going to help. You're with me. Yeah, you with me? You with me? Me and you. We're going to do this. I'll say it again. The mere conservative aspiration to preserve the state at any cost is doomed to failure. We're going to make America great again. As soon as they put Hillary in Gitmo. Yeah. Well, there might be something to that. I kind of doubt it, but still, it's doomed. You're still going to have to morph. You're going to have to roll with the punches. You're going to have to change with the times. You're going to have to tighten up. The conscious orientation of the political leadership of states to dissolving into globalist project is estimated by the Eurasianists as a renouncement of values whose preservation has been the duty of the historical states toward their subjects. The conscious orientation of the political leaderships of the states to dissolving into the globalist project, and they do, is estimated by the Eurasianists as the renouncement of the values whose preservation has been the duty of historical states toward their subjects. Well, to put it in street parlance, they rolling over on you, bitch. They throwing you under the bus. You pays them people all that money, and they'd be your governor and your judges and your police and all these people, and then they throw you under the bus. The rich man come around and say, I want them to be my slaves, and they going to enslave you. Yeah, sometimes the brothers got it. They know how to say things succinctly. Got all the respect for the brothers. Oh, yeah. Charlie Kirk does too, right? She's my chocolate candy. 21st century shall be the arena of the fateful decisions by contemporary political elites. Ooh, that's scary. The 21st century shall be the arena of the fateful decisions by contemporary political elites concerning the issue of the three possible outlooks that we examined. The struggle for the third variant of development lies at the foundations of a new, wide international coalition of political forces in tune with the Eurasianist worldview. And I think Russia are doing fantastic, and China with the One Belt Road, One Road initiative. They've made a lot of progress. They're on this. They're all over it. I'm glad my kids live here. Very glad. America is in for really tough times. It's up for grabs. Anything could happen. I'm going to try to do my part to mitigate that. I am an American. I'm a mongrel. I'm not a Slav. I'm not even a proper Englishman. I'm only an 8th English. That makes me an American by definition. But I can be a Eurasianist. It's all good. The third variant development lies at the foundations of a new wide international coalition of political forces in tune with the Eurasianist worldview. Well, that's good. The Eurasianists consider the Russian Federation and the former Soviet states, the CIS, as the nucleus of the forthcoming autonomous political formation, the Eurasianist Union, and further of one of the basic 4 world geoeconomic belts. The Eurasianists consider the Russian Federation and the CIS as the nucleus of a forthcoming autonomous political formation, the Eurasian Union, and further of one of the basic 4 world geoeconomic belts, the Eurasian continental bloc. These people need to learn how to use freaking commas, for crying out loud. I got to clean all this stuff up and make it readable. I'll suggest this project and ask permission, but I can put it in my own words. You wouldn't even freaking recognize it, but I'll convey the same ideas in an efficient, smooth, and elegant fashion. But, you know, I'll have to do it in my spare time when I'm picking up trash and sweeping for, you know, less than enough money to live on. I need some exposure. I'm working on it. Don't worry. I'm going to get some interviews, going to get some big money piled in before the economy collapses, and I'll have to rush off and get it and bring it here and translate it into rubles, and then I can kick back and spend all my time doing this and plug it away on it. Sounds like a plan, doesn't it? What could go wrong? Well, it's my new dream. On top of all the big pile of ones that didn't work, I got a new one. I'm going to try. I'm okay. Inshallah. That's something I borrowed from the Muslims. I've had some Muslim friends who are people of obvious integrity. And inshallah, that means God willing, okay? Well, you're saying all is God. Nah, I'm tired of trigger people. I'll try to help a little bit, but then I just kind of don't have any patience anymore. But I'll keep trying as long as I can, inshallah. At the same time, the Eurasianists strongly favor development of a multi-dimensional system of autonomies. A multi-dimensional system of autonomies. That's brilliant. That's clear. That's concise. That's good. That's the money phrase, man. A multi-dimensional system of autonomies. See, my book is all about that. But I put it in a whole lot different language. Blue-collar language. Academics that are scholars of political science, they didn't know what to think. I've had some. They were talking about, you know, my ideas and my thoughts, and they're like, well, people think you're talking about, you know, you're a mechanic. You know, they don't get it. They really don't. They can't understand the metaphors because they're not mechanics. I'm not a political scholar, am I? I understand what they're talking about, but they don't understand why to phrase it that way. They think it's much better to phrase it in scholarly language that does somersaults and backflips with the wording where nobody can understand it. Unless, well, in their little circle they do. It's perfect. I mean, really, in their circles, this is freaking brilliant. But outside of it, it doesn't get any traction. It doesn't go anywhere. They got a messaging problem. Like I said, this is 2005. They're probably a lot better. I haven't got to the newer books. I do have some, but I haven't had time to look at them. So I haven't even got all the way through this. But I'm trying to help you understand the principles. This is a primer, after all. Basic principles, and it's a good thing. I think we got something out of it. It's just a little work to slog through it. But, you know, hard work makes it feel good when you're finished and you accomplish it. Even if you're having to dig with a short-handled shovel, it'd be a lot better to have a long-handled shovel, but the short one's all you got. You work twice as hard, but you still get the job done and feel good. I'm going to go through this whole thing again. At the same time, the Eurasianists strongly favor a development of a multi-dimensional system of autonomies. That's great. We view the principle of multidimensional autonomy as an optimal organizational structure for people's ethnic and social groups in the Russian Federation, the European Union, the Eurasian Continental Belt, and the remaining great spaces and geoeconomic belt zones. All the lands, territories, of the political strategic formations, great spaces, must be placed under direct management of a center of strategic government. What? Wait a minute. All the lands of the political strategic formations must be placed under direct management. Okay, all the lands of a political strategic formations. Okay, that's for your formation. Should have made that clear. Within the formation. Not a global government. Direct management of a center of strategic government within the competence of the autonomy remain issues linked to the non-territorial aspects of management. Holy crap. Are you glad you got me to explain this to you? All the lands of the new political strategic formations, great spaces, must be placed under direct management, okay, of a center of strategic government, okay, within the great spaces, the economic area, political strategic formations, yeah, each one, sphere of influence, a pole in the multipolar world, with, okay, center of strategic government, management of a center of strategic government, within the competence of the autonomy remain issues linked to non-territorial aspects of management. Within the competence of the autonomy, within the competence of the autonomy, that's a separate sentence, placed under direct management of a center of strategic government within the competence of the autonomy remain issues linked to non-territorial aspects of management. I'm not going to do it now, but I got to pull my pen out and put about 20 commas in this stuff so it's legible. Well, at least you won't have to rewind this and listen to me again and again. I'll go through it for you again and again in real time. All the lands of the new political strategic formations must be placed under direct management of a center of strategic government. Okay, I'm cool with that. Within the competence of the autonomy remain issues linked to non-territorial aspects of management. Maybe it'll be clarified in the next paragraph. Within the competence of the autonomy remain issues linked to the non-territorial aspects of management. Okay. Non-territorial aspects of management within the competence of the autonomy. Within the competence of the autonomy remain issues linked. Issues are linked to non-territorial aspects. Okay, what are non-territorial aspects of management within a territory? Yeah, okay, I can see that. Within competence of the autonomy remain issues. Okay, I guess that just hasn't been dealt with, and that's what they're telling us. I'm going to go with that. We'll come back to it if I end up being wrong. Well, this is getting long. Holy crap, this is over an hour. Well, I better cut this off because this is just going to get too long. I'm having fun though. Are you? Is this okay? I don't want to make it too long. Some people want really long videos, but some people don't. You can always shut it off and go back and finish it later, but then you interrupt your train of thought. The Eurasianist principle of political management proposes two different levels of government, local and strategic. Okay, there you are. Resolved! Local and strategic. I addressed all this stuff in my book with a modular system of locally controlled government. The great minds think alike. Oh, I'm flattering myself, but maybe it was an accident. But yeah, it's in my book. But it's written completely a different style than this is. Mine is more about the actual architecture of the local government, how you choose your administrators, how you choose the people that are entrusted with your government, with using modern technology, and how you can make it corruption proof, where people can't be groomed for the position and make secret agreements with corporations and certain businesses and powers and ideologies for what they're going to do once they get in there. There's ways to avoid that. That's nipping it in the bud, as old Barney Fife used to say. I really never liked Barney Fife. I don't like that guy at all, that character. I haven't met too many of them in real life. But that's a pretty good principle there. Nipping it in the bud, as long as you're nipping the right thing in the bud. Like corruption. Yeah. Or so we're still good here. I haven't discovered anything in all the time that I've studied all this stuff. And here I am doing a really old primer, but I started out with The Fourth Political Theory, that book, and now went back to this. Yeah. We're good. I had a close one there, though. Dodged a bullet. Under direct control of central management. Oh, that's inside the system. It's like having a modular system for your big system, and my architecture supports anti-corruption, corruption foolproof systems, where your top of your pyramid comes from the bottom through the channels, where it's vetted all the way up. Yeah, and it's controlled from the bottom. It's an extreme form of federalization, but it doesn't make a gutless, powerless federal government either. Federal government can't do anything to you, but in a crisis they can act without all these little, mini kingdoms and fiefdoms balking because their interests aren't being treated better than someone else's. Russia's highly federalized. Most people don't know that, but you got all these regions and governors and even mayors that can refuse to fulfill what the federal government says. In a lot of cases, it's not always good. Depends on what they want to do. Like, bringing in QR codes and mandates and stuff. Yeah, they found that out. That was revealing. They showed themselves. They're still in power, but Eurasianist principle of political management proposes two different levels of government, local and strategic. At the local level, the government is controlled through the autonomies, of course being composed of associations of different kinds. Those with millions of people do small units consisting of a few workers. The government acts absolutely unconstrained and is not regulated by any higher authorities. This government that is at the local level controlled through autonomies. Well, it's not regulated by higher authorities because it doesn't have to be. In other words, it's federalization, big time, the way the U.S. was supposed to be. And that's another way of saying all power not specifically reserved to the federal government is reserved by the states, and all power not reserved by the states specifically is to the people. It's pretty much the same thing here. This coincides with the original meaning of the U.S. Constitution in many ways, which is not a sacred document, by the way. It's amendable. It's amendable, so it's not sacred if you can change it, but it contains sacred ideas. I think this does too. Thus far, the main core. God created people on purpose the way they are. They aren't supposed to be all standardized according to Klaus Schwab, to his ideas, or whoever his employer is. Well, I didn't know I was going so long, because these usually don't smoke for an hour, but I've been relighting it. My timing system is faulty. Hope the battery holds out. I don't think I've made an hour-long video yet. We having fun? Is it okay? Any of you fall asleep? Hey, wake up! The model for any kind of autonomies is freely chosen, stemming from tradition, inclination, direct democratic expression of the will of the organic units. Oh, I like that. Societies, groups, religious organizations under the management of the autonomies are placed the following: civil and administrative issues, social sphere, education and medical services, every sphere of economic activity. I'll go through that again. At the local level, the government is controlled through autonomies, of course being composed of associations of different kinds, from those with millions of people down to small units consisting of a few workers. This government acts absolutely unconstrained and is not regulated by any higher authorities. The model for any kind of autonomies is freely chosen. The model for the autonomies is freely chosen. Okay, they don't have a real set political architecture here, no political mechanisms that are prescribed. I don't know. You'd have kind of an evolution of autonomies that some would work and some wouldn't. Maybe that's good. The model for any kind of autonomies is freely chosen, stemming from tradition, inclination, direct democratic expression of the will of the organic unit, societies, groups, religious organizations. Under the management of the autonomies are placed the following: civil and administrative issues, social sphere, education and medical services. You'll control your own education and medical services. If you want to be bled with leeches, then that's your choice. It's nobody's business but yours. If you're a WHO and you want to drink WHO juice to cure your WHO cough, it's nobody's business but the WHO's. It's a beautiful thing. I'm about to cry. This is wonderful. I love this. Do you love it? I think that this is something that we can look upon as a vision of the future, as something to aspire to, as something that is positive. That's a good thing. I'm going to stop here. This is long enough. I'm on page 42, and I'll remember that. I'll have to get my pen and go through this beforehand and put commas in the right place and prepare a little bit. But anyway, wow. It's almost an hour and 20 minutes. It's good. I'm pleased with this one. I really am. I'm probably not even going to review it. I'm just going to put it right in the pipe. It'll probably take all night to upload it, but that's okay. Geopolitical George